Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis, and this show is the 31st segment in the series on the network of global corporate control. This week, we will hear from Bank Carlson. I've been publishing Bank's emails for over 2 years under the pen name of Bjorn. Bank lives in the north of Sweden, and Bank has been teaching all of us about a lot of things. 10 days ago, Bank sent me the following email. Hello, dear Karen. Sitting at the front row, I want to see the lady grow fat and sing. Now, this has to do with a picture of a Wagnerian opera singer. And you know the saying, it's not over until the fat lady sings. And so whenever I say that things are really moving on, I say that means the fat lady's singing. And so what I did was I tweeted something to Bank, which I thought showed that we had reached a critical turning point. And I said, Bank, I've started giving some Skype interviews on the DC TV program of people that I'm working with. I hope you'll agree to do an interview. This would mean that people would find out who Bjorn is. Let me know what you think. And then I sent him an example of one of the interviews, the one with Betsy Banfield Malone. And so Bank said, yes, that would be great. And so I'd like to show you the interview that I did with Bank.
There we go. Okay, so we're starting now.
Yeah.
This is Bank Carlson, and you know him as Bjorn because he's been writing me emails, and I've been publishing them for, going on 3 years now? Something like that.
2.5.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I thought it would be good for you to meet Bengt because people wanted to know who's been helping, and Bengt has certainly been helping us a great deal. He's been telling us a lot that we needed to know. So I'm turning it over to you, Bengt.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm very glad because I have followed Karen during this process. It's so nice to see that the issue is broadened all the time. New people are coming in and they contribute with this and that. And what we will achieve in the end is so very fabulous, so fantastic. And nobody really knows what can come out of the fantasy of the grassroots. Because there is so much knowledge, so much traditions into all minorities, and we really have to put everything on the table in the future and let 1,000 flowers grow. And I want to see colors. As of today, I see in the north of Sweden where I live. For instance, when I go on the town, people are dressed in black and black and black and gray. When I was young, it was diverse. When I bought the local paper, 90% of the news were good, encouraging. Now they have the news. It comes from Stockholm, it comes from London. It's all arranged and rearranged. And it's a circle that they send it out everywhere. And thanks to internet and thanks to Karen Hudis, I opened my eyes. I had a very interesting job 4 years ago. I was working with developing a lot of things. I got a lot of questions from India, for instance, how to develop new energy sources, how to pure water, to collect different methods of puring water from all over the globe. So I contacted a lot of companies, I contacted a lot of scientists, and the input was tremendous. Internet is such a tool, but as a side effect, I saw Karen Hudis once upon a time, and since I have been digging in everything, when I was a child, 6 years old, I asked my grandmother, she did raise me, and she had the old traditions from many cultures, and she also had the Bible, which we read every day when I was about 6 years old. I had the unusual and bad habit to cry every time that I went to bed at night after all the prayers. We prayed together, and then I prayed my own prayers, and it was always the same. Tears coming down from my eyes and praying about the children of Africa and their situation, and nothing has changed. So when I was about 12, I dwelled into that. Why the heck are they still having the same problems in Africa? I mean, on this planet, it would take 1 or 2 years to fix everything. What are they doing? Where is God? What is this Bible all about? We pretend to be Christians, but why don't we act as if we were? And since then, I have been following this track. And when I was about 12, I read about Mali. And in the 14th century, the king of Mali was the richest person on the planet. Wow. And now, a couple of years ago, I read about Mali. It had been a war there. But who had stopped the war? Muammar Gaddafi had stopped the war. Oh, yeah? And then I read about Sudan, south of Sudan, Darfur, the best agricultural land of the world. Why is nobody taking care of it? Yeah, somebody is. Who? Muammar Gaddafi. He's building a channel. He is leading in water into that land, that vast land, that fantastic land. And if he had succeeded, he would have been able to feed all of Africa, plus have an export of about 30%. But now instead, as I heard, the British didn't like this. This is their land. So they started a couple of freedom fighter movements with their head offices in Stockholm. So the biggest machinery on the planet to make channel for water, they blew it up the first day with rockets. So that is the situation today over there. And then I read about Africa and how they wanted a mutual development together and having a currency all by in their own effort, based on oil and gold and other commodities. And that was also Muammar Gaddafi. So of course he's a terrorist. Now he has committed 3 crimes. Very nice chap. And when I saw this, I started to look at all the other so-called tyrants and found that most of them are labeled by mainstream media as tyrants. And nobody seems to care about the truth. So the truth is hidden. That is very obvious. And if you try to hide the truth, you are on a very dangerous path, because you will never ever get out of it. And the opposite that I hope we will have in the future with new currencies and with free energy from Cash and India and ECAT and a lot of others. We have at least 10 such in Sweden. And in China there are several, and some of them are also backed by the state, but that is not official yet. What are they going to do? I have always said to Karen from the beginning that the definition of grandness, how great a person is is the ability to understand other people. And if you can understand what has been the driving forces within a person and understand their background, their suffering, and why they behave like they do, some persons have been thus great, being able to forgive. Because in a marriage, it's very easy to love my spouse when there is no problem. But to love her despite everything that is wrong, in my opinion, is a much greater thing. Because I must be able to see the difference. I must, of course, see all the wrongdoings that, for instance, those that had ruled this planet for so many thousands of years, those families, what they have done. But where should if I am seeking revenge, shall I seek revenge for this earliest past week, or shall I revenge for 10,000 of years and billions of dead people? That thought is so absurd. I was myself in a situation when I was thinking about what was happening with the Vietnam War and with the Baader Meinhof in Germany and elsewhere. It really got me. Philosophically, I was going through these questions that are surrounding these happenings day and night. I even contacted some persons. I stole some hand grenades and things, and I wanted to join this. And it took 5 seconds after I had done that. I put it back, regretted it, and I was free of getting rid of them, of revenge for them killing my relatives and this and that. It was such a freeing, and I didn't tell anyone, but
you've told us now, Bengt.
Yeah, of course. I have had companies in many countries. I have been traveling a lot. I have been reading a lot. I had meetings with the Taliban and the freedom movements in Nepal, the Maoist guerrillas, and from Africa, South America, and it's a thread through my life, because when I was a child, I mostly read books about Indians in the North Americas, because I liked their culture. I mean, when I was a child, when I was 11 years old, I had read the Odyssey and the Iliad on hexameter and all these big authors. And of course, they can write. They really can. But I thought that I was a little bit smarter than them. And I have been following this track. I have been studying the Catholic records, if you want to call it that, and the Veda books, and Scientology for thousands of hours, and the economical systems and isms for this and that. And
you see, Bengt has been my encyclopedia.
Yeah.
I hate to interrupt now, Bengt, but since we only have a 30-minute program, we'll have to come back to you another time to get the rest of your wisdom. But now you know. Now you've met Bjorn.
Yeah, I'm for real.
Yes. And so is your wonderful advice, and you'll be with us as we do the transition.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for telling us about your discoveries.
Yeah.
Because we need to be guided by your experiences.
Yeah.
So thanks
and
again.
I must tell you, I love the King of Sweden. I don't want to see him hanged. And I have the possibility to see into your room. It's so fantastic with the cat. Do you play cello?
Yes, I do.
Oh, my best friend does that. He was employed by me for many years. He was in a big orchestra for 8 years, I think. I love it.
Good. Well, we'll be back to you another time.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Bengt.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
The capacity to care for one another is very human. This is glue that's going to keep us from becoming unraveled. I've been having some discussions with people who are saying that I only care about the honchos and not about the everyday people. That's one of the reasons that I wanted everyone to understand that what's going on has very little to do with any one person and everything to do with all of us united. That's the reason that the Coalition for the Rule of Law is so much stronger than the network of global corporate control. What is the Coalition for the Rule of Law? It's the BRICS, that stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the US minus the Fed, Germany, Japan, and all of the people who are learning about the network of global corporate control and its shenanigans. After I tweeted about the fat lady singing, there was a debate about whether we were ready for the global currency reset. And one of the people on my Twitter account said, we're definitely warming up, but I'm not sure that Karen's front and center quite yet. Thanks, Karen. And what I tweeted back to him was I said that none of the countries have contradicted what I tweeted to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, because if they did, that would plunge us back into World War III. And as far as I was concerned, that was something that was front and center of the stage. It wasn't warming up off stage. And so then the person tweeted back, if the transition model is as sound as you say, that fat lady will have her spotlight shortly. As of now, a ways to go. Now, what is that transition model? That is a model that came to the World Bank in 2004 from the United States Department of Defense. It was developed there by a political scientist named Jacek Kugler, and this model has been tested in over 200 different scenarios. What this does is it predicts how coalitions will form, and it's 90 to 95% accurate. If there's ever a disagreement between one of the defense analysts and the model will win. And we've been looking at the model now since 2004. I brought Jacek Kugler with me to Ghana when we were looking at a question of why the Ghanaians were not adopting a freedom of information law. And it turned out that the reason that the Ghanaians were not going to adopt that law was because it wasn't really suitable for the situation in Ghana. They were trying to get a perfect law rather than taking the country conditions into account. Once the donor that was financing that technical assistance, it happened to be the Germans, once they realized that if they didn't relax their demands, there wasn't going to be a freedom of information law, the law was passed. And what was also very interesting was I asked the person who had been giving us information about who wanted what provisions in that law, and that person said that he thought the model was actually a little bit dicey because there was no way to come up with exact numbers, and he was the one who had been analyzing those numbers. But anyway, I modeled rule of law at the World Bank with the power transition model, and I found out that it was attainable. And it is attainable. What happened in 2010 was one of the World Bank whistleblowers, Elaine Colville, and we got our statements up about the corruption at the World Bank on the UK Parliament website. And I also testified in the European Parliament in 2011. Once that happened, the model predicted that we were going to have rule of law at the World Bank. And as you now know, since the World Bank is the place that manages the world's monetary gold reserves, This means that we are going to have a global currency reset with 90 to 95% likelihood. But the question is whether we're going to manage to do that before we have something called permanent backwardation of gold, which is that people lose confidence in the paper currencies and they crash. So we have a limited time, and the situation with the Federal Reserve note is getting very dire. It's on life support. The Federal Reserve note is no longer the international reserve currency. The petrodollar is just about dead. That means that people are buying the petroleum using other currencies. And so there's an oversupply of dollars, and it's going to be very important for us to really focus and move very quickly with the global currency reset. So stay tuned, and we'll see how we go with that. And one of the other deadlines that we have is whether in the United States there are patriots who are very, very angry about some of the things that are going on. There's also recently been in 26 states fought the decision that Barack Obama had taken unilaterally, that he was going to grant, he was not going to deport illegal aliens, about 5 million of them, although they had not been admitted to the country legally. And the courts have decided in favor of the states. So at this point, the states are starting to assert the rule of law. I've been in touch with Texas about the discussions that I had at the annual meetings in Lima of the World Bank and IMF. I met with 2 ministers and with about 18 country delegations. That was in the 8th of October in Lima, Peru. And one of the things that I discussed with these countries, we were talking about the global debt facility. One of the things that I discussed was how we were going to be moving forward, and that it was that I was going to be speaking on behalf of the countries, and if the countries didn't agree with anything I said, they should go on record in writing. And so far they've been in agreement. We've also seen some of the treasures in the global debt facility start appearing. We've seen trains between 2 Poland cities that have treasures on them, including something called the Amber Room, which was in a palace in Russia, the Catherine Palace. And also we've heard about some trucks that are buried in a mine shaft that contain gold. So the global debt facility is very real, and we have to see that we can get the agreement of the countries to actually be implemented. What's holding us up is that the agents of the network of global corporate control are still pretending that we don't see them. They're still pretending that that they have any rights when they're actually bankrupt, and are going to be carved up in the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF, so that all of the different assets that are at this point, they're paper assets, but they're the stock of these companies, which is real assets. These are going to be returned to the various countries that they're in. And it's not going to be a straightforward thing because, there are interlocking directors, and many of these companies, they're transnational. It's going to take us a lot of time to try to sort this through, and it's going to take a lot of goodwill on everyone's part. We haven't been really accustomed to that kind of cooperation, but as you've heard from Bengt, this is This is something that's really innate, and it hasn't been encouraged. I received a couple of days ago an email from a man named Mahmoud in Russia, and he asked me a number of questions. He was asking me about the capital markets. He was asking me who the individuals were in the network of global corporate control. And fortunately, Mr. Ross has published a very extensive list of the people that are members of the different secret societies. One of them we talked about, the Skull and Bone Society, and also the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission and the Committee of 300. He's been publishing the names of these agents that are on the network of global corporate control. So we know who these individuals are. It's important to reassure them that if they allow us to transition peacefully to end this paper currency before it crashes, that we're not going to imprison them. What other assurances we're going to give them, this is something that has to be discussed in detail and credibly and agreed to. And we're starting to kick off these discussions now. And we've got to conclude them in a way that that allows for this peaceful transition. One of the questions, of course, is how am I accountable in the middle of all of this to all of these various parties? And one criticism in particular was that I was too busy dealing with the people in authority and power, and I really wasn't connected in any way to the people that the 98 percenters. And so that was also one of the reasons that I've been having interviews of the various people that I've been talking to and getting advice from. As you know, I'd like to put my email address up. I answer all of the emails individually, and I do hold myself accountable to everyone. And as the process goes forward, the most important thing is for people to know that the information is flowing from the very center to the grassroots and back. The fact that I'm getting emails from individuals in Russia, there's been a lot of debate about how deep the state capture goes and which of the leaders is betraying his people and working for the network of global corporate control, and which of the leaders is actually representing the interests of his peoples. And as long as we have these ongoing discussions and the people are raising these issues and they're credibly dealt with, any of the leaders that used to be serving the network of global corporate control can clearly switch and start working for their people. And that's how we're going to move forward. I want to thank you for listening to another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. We've heard from Bengt, whose message to us is very clear. We must care for one another. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudis. Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis, and the executive producer of DCTV's series on the network of global corporate control. Some viewers during the 6 months we've been on air have asked to meet more of the folks that are working in the Coalition for the Rule of Law that is taking back humanity's international gold reserves in the Global Debt Facility. The Global Debt Facility is a trust containing the world's wealth that was established at the end of World War II, and I am legal counsel for the Global Debt Facility. I got that job because I was a lawyer in the World Bank's legal department for 21 years. In this segment, you'll meet Kathleen Brady and Paul Jenkinson. Kathleen Brady lives in Oregon, and she contacted me when I was talking about the County Executives of America having accepted the gold on behalf of the people in the United States. You may wonder, why is it that the U.S. Congress didn't do this? Why is it that the state governors didn't do this? That's because the network of global corporate control has set up little organizations to co-opt these groups and to try to prevent them from doing their real jobs. So we had to go down to the county level. And in some cases, that may not be far enough down, because there is a great deal of corruption that has just taken over this country like weeds. Kathleen is very active in the Patriot community. Let's hear from Kathleen.
So, this is Kathleen Brady, and how long have we been in touch with each other, Kathleen? It's been a year, hasn't it?
Yes. It's been a year.
And Kathleen first contacted me. She's in Oregon because we were dealing with the County Executives of America, and her county executive, Tammy, and what's Tammy's last name? Bainey, that's right. Tammy was trying to contact the County Executives of America, and she has, up until now, still not gotten word back from them, has she?
No, she had a very difficult time contacting them. She's spoken with them, or she tried to contact them at least 4 or 5 times that I'm aware of. So she's been a little frustrated with that.
Yes, as we all are. But let me also say Kathleen's background, because you've been informing me in so many different areas, haven't you? You're active with the Patriots. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
I am an oath keeper, and I'm a very dedicated one at that. So I'm in the Patriot groups. I also volunteer. I've collected signatures for ballots. Kind of an activist. For over 10 years, I worked on illegal immigration, trying to write Congress, call Congress to ask them to, put a damper on that, because we were getting too many, and we were, basically getting too many people in here, so that we were diluting our culture, and I didn't want that to happen. So, yep, I'm kind of an activist.
So when people ask me how it is that I'm so well informed, it's because you're helping keep me informed, aren't you?
Well, I'm trying to keep myself informed, and so when I can share, it's a good thing.
And one of, I think, the things that I appreciate most about you, Kathleen, is that you tell me when it is that I think I've told people something that is actually confusing them.
Yeah.
So
I try, because if I don't understand it, or it takes me, reading something 2 or 3 times to kind of get it, that maybe I'm not the only one that's struggling with that. So I try to let you know.
So I guess the whole point about this is that people want to know and they have a right to know whether I'm working in a vacuum, or whether I'm plugged into people who can tell me what's going on.
I understand why people would want to know. It's a very, to them, I'm sure it looks like everything's going on in the background, and you tweet or Facebook several times a day, but it's all very mysterious. We don't understand how it works. We don't understand high finance. We don't understand sometimes even having access just to an attorney, I think is kind of scary for some people. So I think it's just a matter of getting informed, reading what you put out, because what you do put out is very, very, very informative if you're willing to take the time to read.
Well, but the point is, it also is something that has to be understood, and so you're helping me
I'm glad.
express myself in a way that people are likely to get it.
I'm glad. I'm trying to help out in any way I can, whether that's, relaying to you that you might be talking a little above what most people know, or whether it's informing you about what I've heard through the grapevine, whether it's what I've read in the Patriot groups or whether I've read, so I'm just trying to help you tie it together, my little section of the world.
It's not such a little section. One of the things that happened, I guess it was just last week, was there was a group in West Virginia that had contacted me, and we later found out that the man, Tim Dugan, was that his name?
Deegan?
Yeah, he wasn't what he was holding himself out to be.
No, he, I happened to. It was the wildest thing. I was on YouTube watching a video, and in the comments, I like to read the comments because you tend to learn a lot in the comments. So I followed a link. It said, "Please watch this right now," and that's what I did. Was I followed the link. It was wild, and it was a call. That was a call to all patriots, asking for help in West Virginia, and apparently Thomas Deegan had done all kinds of paperwork and was requesting Patriot help. And it didn't turn out that he was kind of what he said it to be, and the Patriots didn't come. And the Patriots,
well, he was misinforming people. He was telling people that the reason that there were so many refugees in Europe was because the Vatican was promising $50,000 worth of gold to all the countries. And we know that the Vatican doesn't have the gold, so they couldn't have been promising that.
No, they couldn't, and it was wild. Some of the things that he had stated on that call. It was a recorded call, but I listened to the whole thing because I wanted to understand what he was doing, and I went and researched his site. But he did say that on the call, that the Vatican puts aside $50,000 worth of gold when you're born. That was what he said. But, it's impossible for them to put that amount of gold aside if they don't have the gold, if they don't have control of the gold. So they don't have control of the gold because it's in the global debt facility.
And what was very interesting was that after we outed him for being a Vatican agent who was misinforming people, all of a sudden he was arrested and disappeared from sight.
Yes, he was arrested as a domestic terrorist. That's correct. Yes, he was.
So that's how we get the job done, by working together.
We have to work together. It takes all of us, every one of us, it's going to take to get all of this done. It's not just getting the gold out of hiding, which is a big deal, but it's also, the aftermath. And it's getting together to get local currency started, and it's getting together to get all this stuff going that is really important for us to return to the rule of law. What happens afterwards, after we get the gold out, after we get some of this stuff solved, we're going to have a whole big old road ahead of us, I think.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the major job that we have, actually.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be huge. And it's wonderful to just sit and think about what the possibilities are for our future. It really is.
So we're going to be relying on you, Kathleen, and let's end the interview now, but I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Paul Jenkinson lives in the United Kingdom. Paul has been in regular contact by email as we tried to hold the UK's members of Parliament to account. Both Paul and Kathleen are active with groups in their neighborhoods and online as well. Paul is working with groups that call themselves local transition towns that are issuing local currencies and growing their own food. Let's hear from Paul now.
So we're broadcasting now, and I'd like you to tell the people how we got involved and what it is that you think needs to happen with the global currency reset.
Okay, first of all, I was aware that something was wrong in 2008 after the financial crash. I was quite concerned about, could this happen again? Because the whole financial system was in meltdown, and then in a few hours it was back to okay again, which obviously that can't happen. So then I started researching the monetary system, got very knowledgeable about monetary systems, and then I saw you on the Greg Hunter show, where I knew for certain that the monetary system will crash, is 100% will crash, and you was offering the only lifeline to actually save us. So when you offered that lifeline and you said anyone can help, I said, okay, I'll try to help.
And you certainly have helped. For people that don't know how much you've helped, that haven't been following the Twitter, I would say that we have been corresponding at least once or twice a week, right? Something like that.
Yes, it's quite frequent, yes.
There you are. Okay, well, we're in business again. So in the meantime, I see that I have a little bit over a minute of one of our earlier discussions. I'm not sure what it is, but why don't you start off by saying again for our viewers how it is that we started working together.
Okay, after the 2008 financial crisis, I started to research monetary systems because Alistair Darling, who was the Minister of Finance at that time, said the whole system, the whole currency system collapsed. And then just as if by magic, it was okay. So I got myself some knowledge about monetary systems. And then in 2013, I saw yourself on the USA Watchdog with Greg Hunter. And I knew for a fact that there was no way out of the currency system as it stood, but you was then offering a lifeline with the humanities wealth and the global debt facility. So I knew that it was vitally important for me to do something when I had this information.
And so we've been on in pretty regular contact since then, haven't we?
Yes, very, very frequent, yes. About once a week.
Well, I recognized when you wrote me just how important it was, because this power transition model that I've been relying on said that it was only when the UK Parliament had published some of the allegations of corruption that the model then predicted that we were going to succeed in dismantling the corruption.
Yes, I read that. Yeah.
So the UK Parliament is very important. You want to talk about how you were involved with them?
Yes, initially I went to my wrong MP because I live on the border, and he didn't help, even though I showed him the documentation. So then I went to the clerk of the House of Commons and wrote quite a lengthy letter, to which you published on the internet, on Twitter, and you said that was the death knell of the cabal. And the clerk of the House of Commons is duty bound to hand that over to the House of Commons, which he didn't do. I think he's a Knight of the Order of Bath, which I didn't know anything about secret societies at that point. So I thought I was helping them out, and I thought they would be glad of this information. Nothing happened then, so I then was informed that my real MP, who is Angela Smith, I gave the same letter, and then she gave that letter to George Osborne, and George Osborne department replied, but it was totally irrelevant. And it was also, what they were saying was gobbledygook. It didn't make any financial sense, so I pointed that out to my MP. But Angela is only one of 4 MPs that have actually asked George Osborne for our gold.
This will work. I think this will work. Go ahead.
I think the most important few aspects would be to understand critical thinking, but also to validate your data, because if you're going to, no matter how good your thinking processes are, if your data is wrong, your thinking process will be wrong. So I'd recommend anyone to look into how the psychological tricks that hustlers and magicians use, as well as verifying data. But the other thing is, it's so important to have a local network with local currency and understand what makes good money, and how that one type of money affects your society over another type as well. So then you are able to choose the right monetary system for local currency.
And what local currency system do you think your local group is going to be choosing? Have you been doing your homework on that?
I know that, well, the system that forget the name. It's the one where it devalues over time.
Right, that's Silvio Giselle.
That's the fella, yeah.
Yes.
I would probably say just buy some silver coins, but not a lot, and then just get those circulating. That works well, but you could use some kind of time banking. There's a good book on local currencies out there. I think I've mentioned it in one of my emails to you, and I think you've put it on Twitter. But even just paper, as long as you just control the supply, because it's the debasement, it's the printing that can be the problem. It's a bit like a publican watering down his beer. He's debasing his beer, and soon he'll have problems with his clients. So it's debasement over anything, and the denarii, that was debased from a very high content of silver down to absolutely nothing. So if you debase your monetary system, you debase your society, whether it's local or national or global.
Well, we'll be in touch, I'm sure, as the currency reset takes hold, and there'll be a lot of local communities that will benefit if there's one that has done its homework and can lead the others.
There's actually in Britain there's a huge network of local transition towns, but also there's a good network of growing food, and they call it the alternative economy. So although I might be seen as probably one person right at the front, actually I think there's so many people ahead of me, but they just don't know why they do it. They know they want to do it, but they don't know the reasons that we are aware of. You know, they're doing it, say, for peak oil or for resilience, which is a very good, important, because our country, especially Britain, imports more than it exports. We are totally reliant on imports, even for very essentials. So we're not resilient at all. So we really need to start building our own resilience again.
Paul and Kathleen had a debate online about whether we should punish the elites that have been serving the network of global corporate control. And those groups were trying to prevent the world's gold from being returned to the world's people in a global currency reset. Kathleen, whose family had been very active in the military, felt very strongly that there could be no rule of law without accountability and holding people accountable to what it is that that they had done that was not serving the people or their jobs. And Paul's feeling was that if we were going to be holding these people to account, they would not cooperate in the global currency reset. And so what would happen is that we wouldn't have a global currency reset, and we would all perish. We would all starve, because if you have no currency, that means that all of the trade ends. You don't have any way to buy medicine. You don't have any way to continue to work, because many of the companies are dependent on inputs, which are, in some cases, are being imported. If you don't have currency, economic activity ceases. And so Paul was being very pragmatic and saying that if we want to continue to function in an economic system, we have got to postpone this justice that we call justice. And Paul also pointed out that many of the facts are very deeply buried, and it's going to be difficult, very difficult, to understand exactly what was going on. For example, the U.S. Secret Service, which is there to protect the president, is actually there to keep the president in line. When Ronald Reagan was planning on returning the gold to the United States, and he had actually printed treasury dollars. You saw what happened with John Hinckley. I saw a very interesting account of, in the hotel, there was a special tunnel that would have protected Ronald Reagan, and instead the Secret Service made it their business to have Ronald Reagan exposed so that he could be shot. And then, rather than, after he was shot, rather than taking him to the hospital, they drove him around town until he agreed that he was not going to return the gold to the world's people. So we're now in another opportunity. And it's also, a lot of people are quite skeptical about whether it's going to be possible for us to get the job done. We're in uncharted terrain, and all of the people that are on this planet today are actually part of the global currency reset, whether they want to be or not. There are those that can't seem to be open enough to try to understand what the actual reality is. To them, if it's not on the mainstream media, it couldn't possibly be true. And it's a very difficult thing to accept the fact that our reality is quite different, fundamentally different from what it is that appears on the surface. Fortunately, we have the internet, and a lot of people have been studying up. But you see in the interviews with Paul, we actually had quite a challenge because the Skype kept cutting out. One of the things that Paul had wanted to talk about was critical thinking, how it is that you can figure out what the facts actually are if the media is telling you propaganda. How do you know what's real? And what I did this morning was I spent a great deal of time putting documents out, answering questions. If you have any questions, please send me an email and I'll try to answer them. And if you can put that picture up of the switchboard operator, that's one of the important functions that I'm trying to fill, which is providing information to people from the very center of the international financial system. The global debt facility, it's the world's wealth, but it's not going to speak for itself. I'm trying to explain to people what the world's wealth is, and in that function, I've been given a lot of help from a lot of people. Obviously, I didn't know about the global debt facility because it was kept hidden, secret for 50 years. The purpose of that secrecy was to prevent there from being a big fight. After 50 years, anybody who has a claim on those assets has lost it under a concept called statute of limitations. So now the group that's to decide what happens to the world's wealth is 188 ministers of finance and development on the board of the World Bank and the IMF. A lot of people are very skeptical of the World Bank and IMF because these institutions have been under something called state capture. The network of global corporate control has been running these organizations. They haven't been accepting the fact that the board of governors, and there's also an executive board, 25 executive directors are on-site, resident board. But in the meantime, Christine Lagarde and Jim Kim have been working on behalf of the network of global corporate control and ignoring the board of governors and ignoring the board of executive directors, which if you read the articles of the World Bank and IMF, this is illegal. And that is what I've been actually doing. I've been with the commercial liens that I have now placed on the personal assets of Christine Lagarde and Jim Kim. I have held them to account for failing to follow the Articles of Agreement of the World Bank. And now I believe that it is very, very likely that the Board of Governors will assume control, the control that they're entitled to assume, although many of the ministers of finance are not fulfilling their actual function. We may have to put liens on their personal assets if they don't start falling into line. In the meantime, because of the internet, people do understand that that their situation is really, they're being held back by the network of global corporate control, which has no right to hold them back. These assets belong to the world. There's been a lot of questions about whether the World Bank and IMF will be able to function in a way that that is accountable and actually return these assets to the world's people in their currencies. And that's why a lot of people have been asking, well, shouldn't we have projects? The risk in having projects is that you build up a big bureaucracy, and that bureaucracy can run amok, can be captured. That's why I'm hoping that what has been previously agreed by the Board of Governors will remain, and that is that the only thing that the assets in the global debt facility will be used for is to give gold inside the actual currencies of all the countries. And then we're going to be working on cleaning up Fukushima, which is killing off a lot of the sea life in the Pacific, and it's a huge problem. But other than that, I think we'll be much better off if all of the people organize themselves, get themselves into groups at the grassroots, try to learn how to be discerning and not be co-opted by something called AstroTurf, which is groups that are really managed by the network of global corporate control. We're going to have to learn from our mistakes. We're going to have to try to be discerning. We have an enormous challenge in our health because our health has been very seriously affected by many of the things that the network of global corporate control has been doing. There have been cures for diseases that we haven't had access to. There's been energy that we haven't, we've been using petroleum as our source of energy, whereas there's free energy. We've been talking about some of the different forms of free energy that are viable and that we could tomorrow, if the network of global corporate control is dismantled, we could be accessing these technologies tomorrow. And I'm hoping that we will rise to the challenge. It is an enormous challenge, especially because so many people are not aware of what the reality is. They've been buying the propaganda of the network of global corporate control, and it's going to be a very rude awakening for them to, but I think it's going to be a wonderful awakening as we realize what the ingenuity is that we have and that we've been prevented from taking advantage of. There's been a war against some of the medical practitioners who have wanted to protect us from very harmful things that the network of global corporate control has been doing. The Center for Disease Control, it turns out, has been doing exactly the opposite of its mandate, and it's going to take a long time, I think, for us to regain our health, and it's going to take quite some time for us to learn how to be discerning and to dismantle some of the misinformation and propaganda. I'm being told now that it's time to move to end the program. So I want to thank you again for listening to this series on the network of global corporate control. Please stay tuned. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer your emails to me. And until next week, this is Karen Hutis signing off on the series about the network of global corporate control.